Hello, hello, hello. It's Thursday, and I got a little weird thing going on. Give me a moment to get situated. Something I always say I love technology until I don't. And I'm in the don't moment. There we go. I think it's better. All right, here we go. Happy Thursday, everybody. Dr. Tangi here, and it is time for Let's Talk Power Live. And it's the beginning of Women's History Month. We just came off Black History, and the world is still a crazy place. But what gives me comfort and I'm happiest about is actually, no, I'm not going to say happy. What I am realizing is that um, we've been here before. So we know how to do this thing. And it's just something that we're going to have to live ourselves through because if you are a student of history, then you know or you knew that we would be in this moment because with the attempt to have measured agreements regarding the injustices in this country, whenever they have been advancing for people of color, particularly African Americans, there has been wholesale um, fights against it. Something's still going on weird with my computer, and I don't know what's happening. But anyway, we're going to keep going. So I am thankful that we have roadmaps. And as I start each week, I want to take a moment to say what I'm thankful for. I am thankful that I just had an opportunity to present and share at a panel at South by Southwest with two women that I am super fond of, Dr. Mary Rice Booth and Dr. Maureen Adams. We had the opportunity to work together in Ghana last summer and brought that learning to the South by Southwest stage in a panel. Wonderful. And I'm just glad that we had an opportunity to do it. And so I'm thankful for that. I am encouraged by some of what I'm seeing. People are really trying to marshal together and create community in a way that's going to help them be prepared for what's about to happen. If you've been watching, if you watch the person who now occupies the White House, you knew that he was going to do what he's doing. He said it. And I know that we are maybe we didn't want to believe it because it just sounded so austere and it sounded downright mean spirited. And as educators, we work really hard to make sure our students learn how to be kind-hearted and how to treat each other with respect. My very own grandson says that he really has a hard time because what he hears is unkind. And when he goes to school, he's taught to treat his classmates with respect. He is taught to be a good listener. He's taught to respect others and then to see the leadership in our country do the opposite of that is really something that he struggles with. So here we are. But I want to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask you, I am going to ask you about the book. And let's see, where can I get that banner up for you? There it is, Instructional Power Book. There is the link. You know that a QR code is coming. So I want to make sure that you have your book. And let's get started with our conversation for today. All right. So, um, let's talk about the power to educate. And with the beginning of Women's History Month, and here, I didn't know this. I didn't realize that April was Black Women's History Month. So there's something to learn. So today, want to really talk about a woman who I learned about later in life, Mary Terrell. And one of the critical statements that she makes is um, she makes the statement, lift as we climb, onward and upward we go, struggling and striving. We're in the struggling and striving because we are facing really challenging headwinds where the very education of America's children really are at stake. It's not hyperbole. It is not, I don't know, it's not hyperbole. This is real. This is as real as going to school during segregation. It's funny, my daughter and I were talking. Well, actually, my husband and I were talking, and we were looking at timetables because we've found that people think our times of segregation was a really long time ago, and it actually wasn't. I was born in 1964. Let that sink in. So I'm born in 1964, right around or right after the Civil Rights Acts were signed, 65, and then again in 68. My husband's brother, who's 8 years older than him, was born in the late 50s. So that gives you an idea that what we're living in is fairly modern. We have not been a legislatively, legally desegregated country, not even my mom was alive. My mom's 80 years old. So we have been legally desegregated for less time than that. And we are marching with vim and vigor right back there. Don't know if they can go as far back to legally reinstitute those practices, but there's a lot that can get done, and there's a lot that's being done. So lifting as we climb, on upward we go, struggling and striving is the era in which we live. And so as an educator, the question becomes, what is it that we are lifting and climbing? One of the things that I'll talk about what the latest news is. So right now, the latest news just came down today. We already know what they're trying to do, right? The new secretary has confirmed she's been given her marching order to begin dismantling the department. The good news is she realizes it will take a literal act of Congress to even move areas around. So they cannot just go in and surreptitiously start shutting down and moving departments or divisions, shall I say, around. They can't do that. It really does require an act of Congress. One of the things that they're not talking about out loud is this about $34 billion between two major programs. Number one program, Title I students. That's about $18.4 billion. That's for services for schools that are high poverty. And then there's about another 15.5 billion to for services for students with disabilities. Then on top of that, there are the trillions of dollars in student loan allocations, funding, and resourcing. These are the items that are really at stake because we have a large tax cut that has to get paid, and tax cut's going to get paid for somehow. What other thing that has to be thought about is even when they move or try to move some of the divisions around, it's really going to create disruption in services for students with disability, our students who are receiving multilingual language support. It's also going to create challenges for our schools that are high poverty. And here's the invisible thing, idea, sentiment. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say out loud. When you hear the idea or the term Title I, because of the way our country operates, there is a particular vision that comes to mind. That vision is not inaccurate. The vision is incomplete. The population of students that are going to be hit really hard by service disruptions, particularly to Title I funding, are going to be in the 15 states that primarily voted for the person who occupies the White House. Those 15 states are among the poorest states in this country, and they're going to suffer. Many of them, uh, educators in those states, voted for the person in the White House for whatever their reasons are. And what's beautiful here is we live in a country where you can vote the way you want to vote, but we have to realize voting has consequences. And so here we are with these states who have voted for the dismantling of a resource that they live by. So what does that mean? And what does that lead to for them? It's going to lead to a reduction in finances because what's going to happen with the funding, states are going to get block grants, and those block grants are proportioned to their sizes. So a state like California is going to get the correct proportion relative to their size. And a state like Kentucky is going to get block grant relative to their size. Here's the other invisible thing that needs to be made visible. Our larger states who tend to vote Democratic are funding the education of the states who voted to dismantle the Department of Education. No, they did not put that on the ballot and say, please vote for the dismantling of the Department of Education. But when they cast their ballot for the person who occupies the White House, this is what they voted for because he said he was going to do it. In the meantime, we as educators have work to do. One of the good things about what the federal government cannot do, they cannot touch curriculum. I don't know if any of you had a chance to read that Dear Colleague letter. They put it out. Of course, it started off with all of the bad things about DEI and discrimination without the context of history. And then they went about saying what was going to happen. People could get fired and all the things that they've been trying to get people to acquiesce the power to through the mechanism of fear. What's happening is they cannot touch your curriculum, which is a good thing at the federal level. If you happen to be in a state where you are being forced to whitewash history, you are bound by your state's rules. You just can't, the federal government just cannot mandate a curriculum nationally. However, we're educators. I'm an educator. I always say that I'm an educator, whether I'm leading a classroom or leading a learning session or working alongside partners. At the heart of who I am and what I do is education. So here we are with some decisions to make, and we have to think critically about how to lift as we climb, upward and onward as we move forward. And here's some ideas to help us do that. One of the things we can look at is our curriculum. Regardless of whether you're in a state that is quote unquote conservative or quote unquote liberal, those are just labels. And at the end of the day, children don't care about that. That is an adult label that is putting children at risk because it is creating a learning environment that is hostile to all children, whether you name yourself as a conservative or name yourself as a liberal. Children don't care. So here we go. One of the biggest low cost, high return actions that can be taken at any level within a learning environment system, district level, state level, building level, classroom level, audit your curriculum. What stories are missing? Where can diverse voices that challenge single narratives be added? And when I say diverse voices, I'm not talking about racialized diverse voices. We keep narrowing down the language, and this is by design, because if you can attach a negative to a word that's so common, you then recast the imagination about what it means. The word diverse means two. Die is two. Verse is speech or idea or thinking. Diverse. You want to go multiple directions. As an educator at any level, and we have to begin to challenge ourselves to get beyond I'm a leader, I'm a classroom educator. You're an educator. If your job function entails any portion of students doing one of two things, learning stuff and learning how to do stuff, you're an educator. Whether you decide where the funding goes or where the buses go, whether what they eat for lunch or whether what they learn from that, you're an educator. And so our opportunity here at the curricular level, understanding the federal government cannot touch it, we can engage in deep level auditing of your curriculum. Back in last year, sometime, I did a series on 7 forms of bias in educational materials. I'll be happy to share that with anybody. Email me or DM me. I'll tell you how to get in contact with us so you can get those. In your curriculum, as best you can, try not to rely only on the textbooks. Look for ways to use primary sources. That way, you can use speeches, you can use letters, you can use first-hand accounts. That is an easy way to begin to disrupt the single narrative on any side of the coin. Then you want to go ahead and leverage hidden history moments. We just came out of Black History. There's going to be Asian Pacific Islander month coming. We're gonna have women's history, Black women's history. There's going to be Indigenous history. All of these months don't have to wait for months. They can be incorporated naturally into the flow of historical conversation. And for those of you out there who say, well, we don't have White History Month, that's because we don't need it. We don't have a White History Month because the history that children are taught in this country come to them through a conveyor belt of Eurocentrism, grounded in the notion that the United States of America was built for and by a group of people called white. That's another conversation about what that really means. But the reason why we are singling out months, which can then be seamlessly incorporated into the curriculum, is because those voices have been traditionally left out. And so young people really need a wide understanding of American history. And the constant bifurcation of months, in a way, contributes to a limited understanding. And because we tend to teach history by date as opposed to an integrated model, we keep voices on the margin as we march through chronology. And then we want to actually encourage young people to do research projects. Let them begin to dig into stories of their own interest. Young people care about history. The challenge is how it is taught, not just the educator in the classroom's process, but how actual textbooks are written. So that's what can get done on the curriculum side. The other part here is about criticality. This is key. We keep saying we want young people who are critical thinkers, and yet we have curriculum that is the opposite of it, the antithesis of it. Narrowly focused. It's we say we want to go a mile wide and an inch deep. We need to go a mile deep and an inch wide to really begin to build criticality. We need to help students learn how to analyze. Ask them who tells the story, whose voices are both missing and present. How does history connect to today? Another line of questioning here is asking students to think about the impact and influence on time frames relative to actions and the storyteller. We have tools for that too. Use discussion-based learning. Debate the role of education in shaping society. Using Terrell's fight as an example. She was relentless, fought for equal quality. So we have equal quality, but equal access. Relentless fighter for education for all people, particularly the formerly enslaved. That is her story, a story of a fighter, a woman who started the National Council of Negro Women, whose very existence championed advancement of Negro women. And though they didn't change the name of it, we know that the name exists. And that's really important to consider. How do we have a road map forward? We spoke last month about Robert Smalls. He provided a roadmap. Mary Terrell provides a roadmap. The other thing we can do is use case studies of education fights for history. There are so many. We are most familiar with the Brown legislation, but there was a law, an act before Brown, the Menendez Act in California, upon which the writers of the Brown legislation drew so that they could craft the right kind of language to get the Supreme Court to really side with desegregating schools. We have roadmaps that are available to help us navigate these times. So I want to think about what it means from a district leadership lens and even at the state level and a building level lens. Access school policies, you have to assess them. Do they promote inclusivity and empowerment, or do they silence marginalized voices? And once again, the idea of marginalized includes lots of voices that do not ascribe to dominant culture, mindset, perspectives, and behaviors. In school, again, I'll say this. When we say the word marginalized, we think of it through the narrow lens of race. Well, marginalized, if you are in a school where the majority of the student population is of a single ethnicity or race, there's still marginalized voices there. And we have to be able, as education leaders, to know who the marginalized voices are. That's really critical. Support professional learning communities, have ongoing teacher discussions on how to sustainably integrate responsive teaching. And again, culturally responsive teaching is racial and beyond. I taught a group of all African American girls. I still had to figure out how to be culturally responsive to that group. They were gender aligned, they were racially aligned, and they still had varied perspectives that I had to learn. So this idea that being culturally responsive is all about race is a misnomer, which is partly why it hasn't really been as successful as it needs to be. Another conversation for another day. But we have to really support this integration of being responsive to the students in front of us. Engage families and the community. Partner with local historians, activists, organizations. Bring various perspectives into your school, your district, your building, your classrooms. The community is your partner in this fight to ensure we are lifting as we climb, struggling as we strive. That should be a community partnership. It cannot be done alone. Be a visible advocate. If educators and leaders don't stand up, students will feel the fear. I'm going to say it again. If educators and leaders don't stand up, students will feel the fear. You must show courage. You must model advocacy in a real way. What's happening now is a power grab. And I think 2 weeks ago, I talked about how the dynamics of a power continuum. We are in the acquiescence continuum phase. Everything is done by fear, by threat, by the anticipation that something will be removed if you don't do what you were told. That is acquiescence, to stir up fear preemptively, to get you to give up your power. We still have power to ensure every student gets the excellent education they deserve. And here's how we do it. We do it through the curriculum. We do it through strong instruction. We do it through a strong culture. We work with our parents, our community. We work inside the district, the state, and the school. And you got to ask yourself a question. What do your values charge you to do in this moment? Because education is power. Education really is power. and our students deserve an excellent education. So that's what we have for today. Gonna go ahead and remind you, get your book, QR code. If you want to get a copy of a signed one, that's how you're gonna get it. And then always want to be in conversation. And have a great, thankful Thursday. And I will see you next week.